Right?
Got it. Okay, awesome.
We're all set now?
Yes.
Let me get started. All right, first of all, welcome to another program of Astro Weather Report. I'm here with my two colleagues. My name is Tom Parsons. I'm a professionally accredited astrologer with not only the American Federation of Astrologers, but also the International Society of Astrological Research. And I want to introduce my two colleagues. First of all, Mallory Key, who's also professionally accredited and certified with the American Federation of Astrology, and then also Olivia Stell, that is professionally accredited and certified through the American Federation of Astrologers. The last time we were here, we talked about Pluto being an Aquarius, in which I think it was going to be here for around 18 to 20 years. But there's a couple of other planets this year that are moving into different signs that have a little bit more of a transmutive effect than some of these little planets that come in on a daily basis, so to speak, and change signs every 30 days. And so tonight we're going to talk about the planet Saturn, because back on March 7th, it moved into the sign of Pisces. And it's basically going to be there for a little over 2.5 years. This is the normal cycle of Pisces, is more or less like what it is. But in your personal life, Saturn will be there usually in for about a month, unless it goes retrograde, and then it can be in your life for 3 or 4 months. Well, as long as Saturn's in a good aspect, good for you. But when Saturn is a negative aspect, you're going to have Saturn on your, or Satan on your shoulders, is how I guess I would put it. I have to be very blunt and frank. Saturn is not nice when it's in a negative aspect. So the first thing is that, let me just say this. It's going to be in there until, what is it, February of 2026. During May and June of 2025, it drops back into Aquarius for a couple of months, but I don't think anybody's going to realize that, is how I would look at it. So it'll be, from right now all the way until February of like 2026. So anyway, the signs that are, or let me put it this way, the birth dates that will be affected are going to be anywhere from the 21st to the 28th of your sign. Now, it's going to be in a good aspect to those that are Taurus, Capricorn, Pisces, Scorpio, or Cancer. All right, you can expect Saturn to put you on a pedestal at that particular time. But to Virgos, Geminis, and Sagittarius, Saturn is like, as I will describe more about it, is like the Great Wall of China. So it's just going to kind of like stop you in your tracks and cause you to be obedient to the past, which can cause you to want to get a liquor cabinet, is how I would look at it. So let me describe Saturn first of all, and then so we have an idea about what it's doing. I usually describe Saturn this way. It's usually to me like, concrete in some respects, or glue. And what I mean by that is that when we pour concrete into a foundation, as time goes on, that concrete's going to harden, take shape, take form, and become very permanent, reliable structure in our life. So if it's always there, we're kind of feeling like really pretty secure. We've got, a good self-confidence, good self-esteem, because, life is in place, And then if it's always there, obviously Saturn deals with father time, age, antiques, old things, the past is what it deals with. It even deals with karma, by the way. And so the thing is that in dealing with that, we have to deal with issues that are sort of like an impending situation. And then we have to understand also, Saturn is an extremely conservative planet. It deals with like rules, regulations, morals, values, ethics, the 10 Commandments, by the way. But if that's not enough, we have to understand also that this is a very left brain planet. So it deals with being able to concentrate, meditate, focus, analyze, scrutinize, ostracize, be discerning, be discriminating, be more efficient, more effective, be patient, be cautious, tenacity. These kind of things, are the qualities of Saturn. And so the thing is that when it comes into our life and our personal life for about a month, all those that to-do list that's been sort of like hanging on your refrigerator wall, so to speak, we start addressing them because we can't sit still. We need to finish things up is basically what we do. And this basically gives you that, that strength and that endurance, to address these issues. So we've got a lot more free time to think about those things that we want to do in our future is what happens. So the thing is that when it is in a good aspect for about the month, it's a time that we can sort of like get off the leash and start, moving forward and sort of like empty out the past, so to speak. But if Saturn's in a negative aspect, even though I could say to you that it's a time that maybe there are some, some things in our past need to be boxed up and put in the attic with all our other memories. Sometimes it's very difficult to do because our self-confidence is weakened. We become very insecure. Saturn then, that concrete turns into the Great Wall of China, so that our life becomes attenuated. It slows down. There's a lot of unwanted responsibilities. And then, like I say, we feel just been very inadequate and insecure, as well as fear. And then, of course, fear just puts a pause mode because we procrastinate when we are in those kind of states. So, Olivia, you have things to add to that?
Yeah, well, I just feel, Saturn is kind of the taskmaster. Wherever Saturn is, it's sort of a challenge. And so it's very interesting that, with Saturn moving into Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune. But I guess we're going to get into Pisces in a bit, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Saturn is just, like in our Saturn returns, it goes through our life with a fine-tooth comb, making sure that we have the proper foundations, the proper habits, the proper kind of mindset, really, the proper structures set up to support us in our goals, support us in our dreams, our goals, and what we want to do. And it has a long term. Doesn't Saturn think long term? It has kind of like a long term goal sort of idea when it comes to going through your life and creating foundations.
Yeah, it wants, to me, I look at it, when I say glue or concrete, it basically wants to sort of like polarize us, so that we sort of like use that, inner strength and substance within us to be our own architectural blueprint, so to speak, so we don't need a compass as long as Saturn is around. It's a time that we are certainly equipped to take the exit, so to speak, and go do things that we basically want to do. But I do want to mention, because you mentioned the Saturn return, and the Saturn return comes back, it hits everybody between 28 and 30. And then it'll come back between 56 and 58. 56 and 58 is a little bit easier because we've made this journey as a humanoid, so to speak. So we've got a lot more experience and wisdom, I'll put it that way, than we were when we were 28 years old, so to speak. So Mal, do you have some things to add to that as far as like, the ingredients of Saturn?
I think that, you covered it pretty well. I mean, it makes us have to be in integrity. It makes us take responsibility. And in where we are out in our lives, Saturn will make sure that we know where we're out.
Yeah.
Or that you take on what needs to be in order, the better you'll ride the wave. If you really
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, when Saturn's in a great way, I mean, it's a time to address that to-do list. I mean, it just gives you that inner strength, as more like. And what I like about Saturn too, it has sort of like a Virgo temperament to it, in that Saturn is the planet that you actually want to make serious decisions under, because it's like, it slows down, and it's very analytical, to the point of almost being corrosive, in analyzing things. And the reason I brought up Virgo is because Virgos are perfectionists. And even though you may think something is done, the Virgo basically is saying, well, I don't think we need to do some more on this. is how I would look at it.
I
But they
think
do work with three people. That's what's nice about them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly it. And the other thing was, it's good to have that planet that keeps us grounded. It's the common sense, it's the horse sense, it's the reality planet. It's not out there airy fairy. And now it's going into an area that's not really like Saturn at all. I mean, it's totally, I would almost say
Yeah.
opposite way.
It's going into a right-brained area when
Right.
it's left-brained.
Mhm.
So the right brain wants you to get lost a little bit here. So why don't we talk about um, the sign of Pisces that it's going to be going in? It's like, what area of life does that rule?
Mhm. Well,
Anybody?
yeah, I mean, I was going to say some things about Pisces, and then Olivia take on, when you feel led. One of the things that Pisces, which I really do love, is that there are no boundaries. And an artist, people who are creative, the spiritual realm, they do not have that boundary in place to block or, the structure. It's free. It's open. It's no boundary at all. And a lot of Pisces may attest to, they feel everybody when they walk in the room. There are no boundaries between where do I end and another begins, because I feel everything everybody's feeling inside. So I think a Pisces, what they have to learn is those boundaries, and they have to learn where I end, and then it's okay to have that boundary between me and another person. So Saturn coming into a sign that has no boundaries is going to be very interesting. It might end up making those dreams a reality. The things that you want to create, it might give you some substance and foundation to launch those dreams. So,
Right.
I mean, while, Pisces is about, the Hollywood, it's about the entertainment, it's about the movies, the creation of those, the films. And you kind of have to have that clean slate to just slap an idea down and make it work. And I think reality has to play a part, and Saturn's going to maybe boost a different way of film and that creative arts. And then it's also dissolves. Another part of Pisces, while it is creative, it also dissolves. I mean, salt water is part of Pisces, Neptune, and anything that Neptune touches, it can also dissolve it. You might lose things. You might have things fall away from your life, or people dissolve out of your life. So it can be very confronting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that description of Pisces. Pisces is the creative. It's the spiritual, it's spirituality. It rules the 12th house traditionally, and so that is also karma. So it's also a karmic place. It's interesting, Saturn being the timekeeper, meeting up with a karmic position like Pisces. It's a little bit of like reaping karma, and we might have to use creativity to deal with it, or it might force us into our creative self, as if especially if we've been trying to not see that. My opinion, Pisces is expression, so Saturn is suppression. So you have Saturn, the kind of a suppressive force. Let's create walls, in the sign of Pisces, which is pure expression and, theater, the arts, the singer, the dancer, the actor, the actress, the artist, the painter, all of that. You have this expression of what we have been suppressing. So you see that in every realm, right? We see it on the physical for sure. We're going to be seeing it on the health side of things. Physically, we'll be seeing our suppressed stuff being expressed. We'll see it on, the emotions. Suppressed emotions could come out under this. We'll see it, in the economy. Suppressed issues that have been going on, with our economy, with our government. This is all coming out. Things that we have been trying to ignore, we won't be able to ignore anymore. It's going to be like the Pisces expressed right in front of us. It's going to be on stage.
Exactly. And let me say this too: we have to remember Pisces also in a person's chart. It's an area of life also that deals with what we call chronic illness. And chronic illness, it starts out with inherited diseases, psychological problems, drug addiction, alcoholism, prisons, institutions. And then it always deals with things beneath the surface, is more or less like what it does. So it deals with like, hidden agendas, hidden enemies, things of this nature. But yet at the same time, we have to understand that it also deals with the antidotes, the healers. But the healers in this particular case are not exactly, going to the pharmacist and getting a script. It's like seeing the psychiatrist, seeing the surgeon, seeing the ophthalmologist, or maybe the Reiki healer, acupuncturist, reflexologist, maybe eating less out of a box than a can, working out, doing some meditation, things of this particular nature to cause us to be in harmony, so to speak, with ourselves, is more or less like what happens with this also.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that out because about the chronic issue, because the thing with expressing illness, an acute illness, like if someone catches the flu, that's an acute illness. Expressing illness is actually better than suppressing that illness, because then it goes deeper into the tissues and you have then a chronic illness. You have a chronic state. So right now, being sick and expressing these things, with springtime coming, is actually a good thing. We want to see that. If that's not happening, you have the chronic state that is worse. That is worse. And Father Time with Saturn, that maybe we're not going to see it now, but down the road is when that would express. And so we want to be expressing things now.
And I think you don't want to ignore it. A lot of times we don't want to. That's why we suppress. And the 12th house is that subconscious realm. So you have to, and also allowing yourself to go speak with someone, allowing yourself to go and dig in those areas that are hard for us to access. I mean, that's
Absolutely
subconscious, and a lot of subconscious talk about the consciousness, even the collective consciousness, is being talked about. And I think we have to allow ourselves to go and reach out and dig in those areas that are very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like putting, to follow the Saturn thing here, it's like putting money into the bank of our emotions. And if we're actually feeling those negative emotions, like Saturn kind of rules, if we're actually giving time in safe spaces, like with a therapist, to feel the negative emotions, we actually feel much better and healthier in the long term. So it's kind of like therapy is putting money into the bank of your better emotions, even though it hurts in, the actual session.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing, because the 12th house dealing with chronic, obviously it also deals with like alcohol and drug addiction.
Oh, yes.
We have to kind of bring those things out too, that that's a way that some people, kind of think they're resolving their problem.
Right.
And that's putting it on the back burner to incubate within their body.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this would be a good time to make a plan for that. If that is something that you struggle with, make a plan for, okay, I'm not going to, engage in that today. I'm going to do this instead, because you have Saturn with those tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Escape time. I mean, a lot of people want to escape and then go into a non-reality, to not have to deal with the pain and suffering or whatever may be underneath. And a lot of people, I think alcoholism and drug addiction, I think that when we look at what Saturn and Pisces did, there were a lot of antidotes that came out of to help people with addiction. So, and recognizing that you may have an addiction and know that it's okay. Most people do. So, or have something that can be a habit or an addiction that could, if not handled properly, could lead to a more destructive life instead of handling life or thriving.
So the let's talk about, because now that we kind of understand Saturn, we kind of understand moving into this area that's can sometimes have a hidden agenda, but yet as we were talking about, it can certainly bring a lot of things out that have been in a pending mode in our life in some respects. So I always like to talk about what are the negative things. We're going to go back to we're going to go back to February of '94 to about March of '96. because in going back when Saturn was in Pisces before, we have to understand history repeats itself.
Mhm.
And then we're going to go back to, what was it, the 60s? Yeah, 64 to 67. And we're going to talk about that. And then Mal has gone back even into the 30s. And so, you know, she can, did you go back to the 30s, Olivia?
You're on mute. Oh, she may have, that may be that connection again.
Oh boy.
Oh, she'll probably get back in a moment.
I hope the electricity didn't go out. So
I
why don't we go back until she gets back here. When we get back and
Well,
the negative things, first of all, that went on in the 90s. Well,
right. And I have
from
that.
94 to 96.
Right. And I have actually May 20th, 1993, Saturn dipped into Pisces too.
Yeah, it did. It did. As a matter of fact, during May and June there, it did dip in there.
So,
Do you want to bring out some of the things that went out there, or do you want me to start
yeah,
it?
I mean, or wait, did you have something you wanted to go ahead and?
Well, I mean, what happened was, first of all, there was a war over there in Bosnia. The Serbs, Chechnya, I think is what it was called. Even the President Rabin of Israel was assassinated at that particular time. Welcome back. And then so he was assassinated. O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. The David Koresh and the Davidian cult, that was, of course, destroyed at that time. The federal building in Oklahoma that Timothy McVeigh, you know, blew up at that time, which is interesting because Saturn deals with the government. And then let's see. Oh, yeah, the IRA even attacked Heathrow Airport. You know, that kind of stuff was going on. And then getting beyond that, it's interesting because if Saturn's in Pisces, which is, and the reason that we're bringing up Neptune, by the way, is that Neptune rules the sign of Pisces. So that just like Capricorn, Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn, by the way. So, but Neptune, you know, it's air and water, but that's what Pisces is all about. Nerve gas was released in Japan at that time in a subway. Mad cow disease went on at that particular time. Meningitis epidemic was over there in West Africa. And then we have to get in, you know, to the environmental part of it. 38 million acres of the rainforest were sort of like deleted at that time, you know, as they cut the trees down. And then the last thing that I have is inflation went on at that time. And it went up here in the United States up to about 6%. Over in Europe, it went up to 7% or even higher over there. So these are the kind of like, because life is a roller coaster. We all know that by now. And so these are some of the negative things that, you know, that I saw that were going on. But Mel, do you have some things to add to that?
I do see there, it seemed like the earthquakes were prominent during that time. And we had an Indonesia earthquake in 1993. We had the Japan earthquake 7.3 magnitude, Russian earthquake 7.6. So it seemed like there were, you know, and then even a 6.7 in San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles. So LA
Right.
experienced that. So it seemed like, you know, the Earth, which Saturn is Earth, it's an Earth sign. And as you said, it rules Capricorn. So, and then we, as you said too, Neptune is water. It's the planet salt water. And then, you know, we may have water issues too. And there were some tsunamis involved in those. So.
Yeah, in 1995, a freak wave was detected near Norway. So they discovered the ability for freak waves to exist. Speaking of water.
Right.
And there was in 93, there was a 7.8 magnitude earthquake in Japan also. So off the coast.
Well, if you also look, there were a lot of ship disasters. There were 3 or 4 ship disasters that never seemed to make it into the newspaper or on the news. But there's even a ferry. I forget where the ferry was at, but even it was, I think, over in Europe someplace. But even 850 some people were, killed at that particular time on a ferry boat. You know, to sort of like relate that maybe that cruise ships, not the cruise ships are going to, have a problem, but we do have to remember that cruise ships were at the docks because when COVID came up, which was, a Neptunian kind of thing, that's for sure.
Right.
And there are also blizzards. The East Coast blizzard was one of the worst snow blizzards in US history. And of course, now we're dealing with that up in the north end.
Well,
And
I think that's one thing. Yeah, I think that's one thing we have to remember too, is that Saturn deals with like the whole, the cold, harsh, callous winter. I mean, it really does. So I think that it's like, certainly going to look, it's in March. I mean, we could be looking at April when we're maybe going to one of the stores to start planting some flowers, and we could get, a freak weather reports that are going in. I mean, look at what's happening out in California with snow and water.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd, that Saturn's in Pisces, and this the blizzard is sort of like rolling across the Midwest and upper New England and thing of that nature with this particular planet.
Right. It's not to mention the red tide or the seaweed, the
Oh,
huge seaweed that's hitting Florida right now.
Exactly.
Tampa Bay, it's headed for like the entire Gulf Coast. It's twice the width of the US. So, I mean, we have weird tidal things coming.
right.
So the other thing too that you sort of like brought up a little bit, Mel, is that the water crisis, like in some respects, so there, definitely whether it's going to be icebergs melting, so raising sea levels, or as Olivia just said, because Neptune is a poison when it's in the negative aspect. That's for sure. It's extremely toxic. We need to understand it's like wasn't there something like sarin gas that they released like over there in Syria, to kill thousands upon thousands of people. So these are like things that for whatever reason that certain people got provoked to sort of like instill the negative side of Saturn on society as a whole.
Oh, interesting. Which would explain all of the chemical fires that have been happening.
Isn't that interesting?
Essentially every other day since the beginning of the year, which is
Right.
just it is poisoning the water and it's poisoning the air.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering, what are they going to do with the garbage?
Right.
Garbage is piling up and piling up and piling up. We need to we need to find a solution that goes beyond recycling, you know what I mean, to more or less like, keep up with this.
Right. And I do think solutions need to no longer be suppressed.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Right.
It's like we know certain people and our evolution, like Telsa especially, Nikolai, what happened to him with his innovative.
Right, Nikola Tesla.
Exactly. So you want to go back to the 60s and we'll talk about some of the negative stuff that went there, and then we'll get into the positive things here.
I was gonna say we do have some positives.
Yeah, there is an interesting thing I did want to bring up before we go back to the 60s. In 1995, speaking of, chemical spills and chemical fires, a chemical fire in an apartment complex in the Philippines led to the discovery of plans for Project Bojinka, which was going to be a mass terrorist attack. So this chemical fire the discovery of it actually stopped this project from happening. And so it actually turned out to be a good thing, even though it was a disaster. But Project Bojinka, the plan was for them, what they wanted to do was to assassinate Pope John Paul II, blow up 11 airliners, shut down air travel, and crash a plane into the CIA headquarters in Fairbanks, Virginia.
And this was what year?
This was in 1995.
Oh, so 6 years later.
Mhm.
that
Later, they
fact.
can be part of it.
Right.
Goodness.
Well, I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, because, when we look at, Neptune in the 12th house, I mean, it does deal with prisons, you know what I mean? But it does deal with like, assassinations and things like that. Like I say, the Israel's, president was assassinated at that particular time, but who knows how many others were, assassinated during that particular period. So why don't we
Right.
talk about some good things that went on in the 90s, and then we'll move down to the 60s so that we sort of like, get in the good, so then people understand what can they expect here in the future.
Well, I think
Absolutely. Well,
science. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. So the 1995, they called it the International Year of Tolerance,
Hmm.
which was, I think that has a theme that we have kind of right now of we're more aware of tolerating others, and we have more of a focus on tolerance.
Mhm.
We also, the most distant galaxy was discovered in 1995.
Oh,
And so these are some good things that we can discuss.
right. And NASA was very active. It seemed like when
Oh, weren't they though?
yeah, I mean, it was even in 1996, we had NASA launches the Space Shuttle Endeavour and 6 astronauts on board. In 1995, the Space Shuttle Atlantis docks with Russian Mir space station. So, I mean, we might have more advancement happening in this couple, or a few years.
Well, I like it because, like what you just said, the cooperation, the Pisces element there,
Mhm.
of like cooperating, together with what would be termed an adversary at that particular time on something that's mutually going to help, sort of like the evolution of humanity, science, things of this particular nature.
Mhm.
When they're, but yet at the same time, we have these revolutions and people killing each other. And it's like, my goodness sakes, it's like, what are they teaching in school here?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to cause a mindset like that to go on, like,
So,
so I have some things here that like, um, let's see, there was stem cell regeneration that went on at that time. There was a hepatitis vaccine that was created. There was treatment for prostate cancer that went on at that time, as far as like the medical industry was, concerned. And then it was interesting because women were actually assigned to combat ships during that particular period, and that there were 33 female priests that were ordained by the Church of England.
oh,
We also, I think that was, Nelson Mandela was a elected president of South Africa at that particular time also. So we have to understand, that there's, as we're trying to bring out here in the conversation, there are a lot of nice things that in a step-by-step way that we become very cognitive aware of, that humanity does also, that moves us forward, from the antiquated history into our future. But sometimes it's, just basically a struggle, for those kind of things to go on.
well, so we might be able to look for antidotes or new ways of combating illness,
Yeah, exactly.
illness.
I mean, especially with Saturn being in Pisces. Pisces is water. I mean, is there going to be more than just kidney transplants that go on? You know what I mean? Or, the bladder, or or even dealing with the liver, things of that nature. Cleansing. Isn't that the cleanser? So in the next 2.5 years, they've been saying there's going to be a cure for cancer forever, but we can comment about that. But let's hopefully that's going to be on the docket also.
Well, and Pisces rules the lymphatic system and the bloodstream. So it might be that we learn a little bit more about the lymph and what it does for health.
Exactly, because it's like when cancer comes, those things I think are immediately affected, especially in women. So any other good things that we can talk about that went on besides that? I mean, we could get into the Hollywood industry, you know what I mean? But
Riverdance came out.
Riverdance. Yeah.
First
wow.
opened.
What did?
River dance first opened.
Okay.
I think Canada had its first female prime minister close to the beginning of when, when it went into Pisces, Saturn and
Oh,
Pisces.
good.
So it's interesting because there's a lot of talk I hear about having equal pay. Again, I think the soccer team, the women's soccer team fought for the equal pay. I think they got it.
Exactly. Well,
So,
for the rights.
so
Well, there was another thing. The smartphone was created, and then the PlayStation was created
there you go.
in the 90s, by the way. So, the entertainment industry in that respect. So I guess we can move down to the 60s. And the only reason we want to move down to the 60s is that we want to, like, once again, bring out the negative, but like these are being tied together. I think as you kind of like see these key words are, constantly being, put on the prompter and, like in some respects and, like right in front of us, the good as well as the negative. So it gives you about, a better idea of like, some of the things that, that maybe we need to be cautious of as we move into, the coming year that can be beyond our control, by the way, because Saturn deals with the government, but yet, some of the things that, certainly that can deal with some of these just, violating, sort of like the 10 Commandments, the rules, of an ethics of being a human in some respects. So let's go to the 60s, Mel. You want to?
I think a lot happened in the 60s. There's a lot to mention, and there were several aspects with Saturn in Pisces that might not have been seen in the later, in the 1993 to 96. But we had to deal with the North Korea, Vietnamese. There were skirmishes with them. We had the race riots break out in California. We had definitely the anti-Vietnam War protest in 1963 to 66. So, I mean, there were definitely some intense times in that latter, in the 60s.
Yeah, and let's bring out that we're talking about from March of 64 to February of 67, by the way. Right. That's the last time that
right.
Olivia, have you got some things that went on at that time?
Well, in 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. was announced as the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. And we have Dorothy Hodgkin is the first British woman to be awarded the Nobel Prize in chemistry for her work on penicillin and vitamin B12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then Che Guevara speaks at the United Nations General Assembly in New York City, where an unknown terrorist fires a mortar shell at the building during his speech. Yeah. And Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act into law.
Yeah, that was important.
So
and
these are,
right.
Yeah, really great things. Let's see.
Well, I know that the Beatles and the Rolling Stones came to the U.S.
Huge.
The Animals, which is part of the Pisces element, the entertainment industry.
Yep.
Muhammad Ali was the boxing champion at that time. And actually things like the Boston Strangler was finally arrested.
Oh, yeah.
Finally during that time. It's interesting because Neptune rules water. The Aswan Dam over in Egypt was being built at that particular time. And then we have to say the first Ford Mustang, came out.
Oh, fun.
And then let's not forget the revolution that was going on, as I talked to you guys earlier. That's when miniskirts came out.
Yes. The sexual revolution is here.
Exactly.
I have to say that in 1966, going back to the entertainment industry, Batman television series started, debuted on ABC. Star Trek debuted in September. And then NASA launched a Lunar Orbiter 1, the first U.S. spacecraft to orbit the moon. In 1966.
Yeah, they sent an orbiter to, did you say the moon? Because they sent one to Mars also.
Right. Well, this was the, The Soviet Union lands Lunar 9 on the moon in February, and the U.S. follows
Oh, that's right. They beat us.
with Surveyor 1 on a soft moon landing. Yeah.
Wasn't that 9.2 earthquake in Alaska? Didn't that
Yes.
60s?
March 27th, 1964 was the
Okay.
Great Alaska earthquake, 9.2 magnitude.
And it's only because I think it only killed like a couple of hundred people, only because it's not exactly like LA or New York, some of these more popular
Right,
areas.
right.
And that was really huge that was the biggest one in US history, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And then
As far as the United States was concerned, I mean, that's the biggest that we know of.
you mentioned the Beatles before. The Beatles released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in
Right.
1967.
And we have to remember, I think it was during the 60s, there were a lot of Vietnam War protests going on.
Yes.
There was like, I think, a couple of 100,000 that gathered around the White House, protesting the war at that particular time.
Right.
And even people, crossing the border going to Canada, from the draft, because it's like, and then it's interesting, when we left at that particular time, I mean, it's like it was just like, grab your suitcase and run. I mean, there was nothing orderly in any way, shape, or form, or about our exodus from that particular country.
Yeah, that was a very painful time.
Well, it reminds me of what just happened last year with Afghanistan, how we left that. It's like,
Right.
so hopefully in the next couple of years here, I'm just looking at it that somebody needs to, sit down with Ukraine and Russia and like, what is this all about? We need to reach some kind of compromise here, because it's not only affecting, your people, your husbands, your children, your babies and things of that particular nature, but it's affecting people in, other parts of the world, because especially Ukraine is like the breadbasket, and certainly, Russia is an extremely strong, even oil as well as gas exporter. It's more or less like what happened. Like I don't know. I'd like to say what is this nonsense all about? But if it's in Pisces, it's like you just got to dig and dig until the truth comes out, and then we have to understand is it's sort of like I don't know.
Maybe another agenda.
Even when they bring out the truth,
It's
having a Hollywood star write the script.
And speaking of, digging, the LBJ in 1964, LBJ reveals that the US has secretly developed the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, which was an advanced long-range, high-speed, high-altitude reconnaissance airplane.
Did that get shot down at that time? Because there was a pilot over Russia that got shot down with that.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know if
I just know they revealed this was.
I don't know if that was at that time, but I know that there was. I think it was that particular aircraft that got shot down because they didn't think that a missile could hit it.
Interesting. And didn't they just now? Didn't you send this, Mallory, where they just showed this really advanced new aircraft?
Well, they have. Well, I don't know, but the drone just got shot down. So
in a drone. Okay.
It's a drone. But they do have prototypes. I mean, it's a totally different thing. A prototype's of flying cars. I don't know if that. I mean, they actually have made a prototype of a flying car that works.
I have been waiting for a flying car.
I think that would be fun.
I thought we were supposed to have those in the 80s.
Yeah, we probably weren't. Another, and this is like on a positive note, to the first successful human-to-human heart transplant happened in 1967.
Wow.
So, and it was a success.
Good. Maybe more advances will, go on, even with that. People don't have to have their chest cut open.
Right.
Look at it.
Right.
So there was one last time, I think, Mel, that you looked at the 30s.
I
as
did. I found
that
something.
particular time.
Right. In the 30s, there were just, there was a lot of change in that time. The Hoover Dam was completed in 1935. And it's
And then
interesting.
the Aswan Dam in the 60s.
Oh, wow. Because isn't that interesting? I mean, that's water and then Saturn damming up water. I mean,
Yes.
sure. The Great Plains, the Great Plains in 1935 was struck. It was the worst dust storm in U.S. history during April. So, I mean, obviously there was not water. So restrictions,
Right.
you said, Saturn restricts.
Restricting water.
Amelia Earhart flies solo across the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, here's where you get into women again, getting the proper recognition.
Mm-hmm. And then, yes, I mean, and women keep bubbling up during these times. Talking about the entertainment business, the first Technicolor Mickey Mouse short film is released in 1935, colored. Remember, there was
Thank God.
So, and then the China Clipper makes the first Pacific air mail delivery in 1935. So, and then if we look at 1936, and this relates to, it's interesting, this is happening, in this day and time, King Edward advocates to marry Wallis Simpson, the American divorcee actress. So, and Jesse Owens wins the four gold medals at the Summer Olympics in Berlin. And BBC first public television broadcast. That was all in 1936.
Yeah, well, that's what's nice. We have all these innovative things
Right.
going on, but sometimes, people are always remembering, the negative things that we brought up, and we have to bring them up because it's, our humanity is unfortunately, hasn't grown up.
Right.
Yeah,
but it's
have
cool
to bring those up.
Yeah, but it's cool to be reminded we're gonna have like a new form of entertainment with that color. And then, a new technology.
I mean,
and
a new
technology of deliveries, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, because we're talking about the entertainment industry, especially movies, I'm just wondering if the movie industry itself, you know what I mean, that the movie theaters to sort of disappear because everybody's at home and they've got all these whether it's like Apple or Amazon or Netflix or all these kind of things, to entertain them.
And it might be interesting if we move away from the big, Hollywood, companies and move more into indie films.
Into what films?
This is what I like about Netflix, by the way.
Indie films.
This is that I like it that they don't have this Hollywood polished person that we've seen in every movie here and here. You've got new directors, new writers, new actors that somehow they just feel to be a little bit more real to me.
Yes.
Cosmetic, and hiding behind this camouflage of makeup, so to speak.
Well, I mean, speaking of the film, Walt Disney premieres Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937. And then writing is also under this too. British author J.R.R. Tolkien fantasy novel The Hobbit was published.
Oh my goodness.
Which now The Lord of the Rings is such a thing.
Right.
The first, this is another area, the first blood bank opens in Chicago. And the emergency 999 telephone service started in the UK. I'm not sure what that would be related to. But I think we don't know with the AI, and if we have this new evolution of technology, we may not even know what's next. We kind of had Star Trek lay the groundwork of, watches that are like the Apple Watch. What's next? The telephones or the iPhones, and we may have different kinds of communications.
And wasn't the Jetsons supposed to be this year? Like 2023 was actually when the Jetsons, either when he was born. I think it was like supposed to be when he was born, right?
This year,
right. I think you're right.
Oh my God.
Something like that, 2023, right? So you have a robot maid. Can't wait for that.
Well, I think if we look at, like, if we apply this to what's going on today with Saturn being in Pisces, I mean, it's easy to recognize, you know what I mean, when we get into drugs and alcohol with all the fentanyl that's coming across the border. You know, I mean, it's an epidemic.
Well, speaking of that, we just lost a child in our local town, you know, with laced fentanyl on another substance.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
And then, you know, as we talked about before, you know, in dealing with the banks and institutions, and, you know, like I had said earlier, we bailed Mexico out, $20 billion loan, so to speak. We have to understand that two banks at this particular time that we're doing this have already failed. And, you know, as I've been talking to you guys, I think for, you know, the last 7 or 8 months, in which I basically thought that the Dow Jones was going to drop down to about, you know, 27,000, you know, because it was at 39. I think it's at 31 or 32 today, but we've had these two bank fails, and the government has bailed it out. But I think that it's, you know, a time that, in a personal way, I mean, I've been buying gold is what I've been doing. But I think that we need to, you know, understand that, like, you know, Saturn, which represents the institution, I think is going to be putting, you know, tighter and tighter controls, you know, over the finances of everybody's life. Not that they're, you know, the government's not only going to go bankrupt, and inflation and raising taxes and, you know, all these, you know, kind of things to go on, so that the, but I think the government is going to come out with their own cryptocurrency, I think is what's going to do. I don't think that they're going to want you in the next few years here, you know, to have cash. I mean, you guys have been to the store, and, you know, it's like more and more of the checkouts are, you know, just zipping the card, you know, get away from that cash. But not only getting away from the cash, they don't have to hire a person. It goes on. So that's where the economics of it is, you know, going to be seen. So I'm just looking at it that would, because we had talked about Pluto being going into Aquarius with the technology that you were basically saying, you know, talking about earlier, the artificial, that this is just, who knows where that is going to be going in 18 years here.
Right.
I would look at it, you know, the new networks and all these other kind of things, but this can be applied absolutely to currency. Would like that, but instead of you know, Aquarius, which is the humanitarian and going out and getting what I want and need, if Pluto is there, I'm just wondering, you know, is there going to be more tighter and tighter controls over our individuality, and you know, the amount of finances, so that it's like, you know, somebody that's like a kid mowing the lawn for like, you know, $20 has got to report that to the government, you know what I mean? Which is like an insane to me, is what it is. So we'll just have to see. You know, we had talked about before, it's interesting that the all these ship disasters that we were talking about, but under this aspect, we are going to be helping Australia to build them 3 nuclear-powered submarines.
Right. So what's the
It's
threat?
basically the ocean. A submarine, it's a ship. So, you know, we just completed that contract with them. But then I'm wondering, look, the fish, let's see, the ocean, is Saturn, do we need to apply some kind of rules here? Because
Yeah.
fished out.
Yeah, especially
it's
protecting
doing.
the whales and the dolphins
Exactly.
and their sonar. I mean, yeah.
So it'll, you know, so those kind of things could go on. And the other thing I was thinking of, you know, even in New York, they've had a few subway kind of incidences that have been going on. And so I'm just wondering if that is going to be increasing, you know, as well as, like, we haven't talked about, you know, any kind of like mine disasters, because, you know, it deals with, like, certainly tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes and, you know, things of this particular nature, but, you know, it also deals with mines. And so it's just whether it's here in the United States or someplace in the world, you know what I mean? But there could be something that goes on that, definitely reaches the front pages, that, that is very caustic, in dealing with things like that even.
Mhm.
So it's
Yes, I was going to say something early when you mentioned something about more government regulations on things too, and it may be also when Pluto gets into Aquarius. This is also the spiritual aspect of Pisces and Neptune. Going out in the gurus that are we going to have any restrictions upon our religious freedoms, and or
exactly,
maybe a
that's a
different
very good point.
platform.
Yeah.
And I'm not I mean, this is from another astrologer too. Pam Gregory also has mentioned, are we going to see any kind of restriction or new platform for religion? Maybe the churches are going to be altered and reconstructed,
Or lose patrons.
Mhm. So,
Right.
I might be opening another channel for that to be about, but
Yeah.
also be careful of gurus that could lead you astray.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the new age turning into more and more of a religion and more of like an alien religion. And so really, using some discernment with the ways that can really, I mean, you might be jumping out of a fundamentalist past into, the new age, which can be beautiful. We just have to really watch out for ways that can be undermined.
Yeah, or sent you down a road you didn't plan on. Yeah.
Right, right,
Well,
right.
let's understand too that Pluto deals with like the pineal gland, and we know that parts of our DNA that deal with the pituitary and pineal have been sort of like cut off. So maybe this is going to be given much fuller expression and sort of like get turned on, to those select few that are taking steps to sort of like clean out this mundane sort of
Consciousness.
like thinking patterns from day one that we've been taught, so that they can, so that we can start developing more of a spiritual atmosphere. But developing that spiritual atmosphere will get us away from the orthodox teaching, so to speak, and then get us into the other teachings that are at our disposal. But it's just that sometimes it's hard to find in the library, so to speak, is how I would look.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so that's where I like how you were talking about the pineal gland, really connecting. It's more of like an inward connection rather than looking outside of us for, the gurus or, the teachers. It's more of, creating our own inner connection and discernment.
And that
Yeah.
whatever inside shows up outside. So we create from our inner being and it shows up. It's a hard lesson to learn. It's hard, very
hard.
difficult.
It's so hard, but that'll teach you quicker than anything else, right?
We have to, and that's taking on responsibility for what is showing up around us. Not that we're responsible for other people's reactions, but we have to be, we can create a reality too and choose where our thoughts are focused. And it's very difficult.
Exactly.
Especially with the distractions going on today.
Yes, with distractions. But I mean, I think that's a really good point to bring up. It's going to be, especially now with this intersection of like Pluto and war, and then, Saturn with the Great Depression Dust Bowl, where these two, planets are intersecting. It's going to be about where we put our attention and not being pulled down into fear. It's going to be fear is going to be our worst enemy in this, under this intersection of these two planets.
I think that's it. I think that is one of the lessons, and maybe it's the Earth school to learn how to focus our thoughts, not to suppress our emotions, but to actually be able to direct where I want to choose, have my thought go. And do I want to be in the drama of what's happening over here, or do I want to create something different and I have permission to do so?
Absolutely. That's actually a beautiful description of Saturn going into Pisces is better spiritual habits, better thought habits.
Right.
And my cat
As
wants
an antidote.
Well, I mean, it deals like kind of by shedding that toxicity,
Right.
and getting into who and what we really are and what we came here to really do, so to speak. But You know, as I said earlier, from day one, we've just been indoctrinated, you know, so to speak, to, you know, stay within the parameters here, you know.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's
Obey
one
the
of the,
rules.
yeah, and that's one of the
Think this
beautiful,
way, don't think that way. And I told you guys many times, it's like, you know, when I look out my window, you know, as I've said before, there's just a lot of mannequins posing as human beings, and that gets scary. Is what it is. So we've got to hide behind our masks, like in some respects, you know, is what it is.
Mhm. Wow. Well, thank y'all.
So are we all set? Do we have anything else to say on this? I mean, like I said before, from the very beginning, when this does come into your individual life, it's usually there for about a month, usually a couple of weeks either side of when the astrologer basically is going to tell you it's going to be hitting, unless it goes retrograde. And as long as it's in a good aspect, you get 3 or 4 months of like everything falling in place for you, so that you, as I said earlier, to reiterate, become your own compass, you know, and be able to create your own architectural blueprint in life. But the Tauruses, the Capricorn, the Pisces, the Scorpios, the Cancers, from the 21st to about the 28th. It goes back and forth all the way until like around February of next year. So this will be a constant, you know, in your lives. And then the Virgos, Geminis, and Sagittarius. Um, um, I don't know what would you guys say that they need to do here?
Challenge?
They can't run and hide, you know, or jump in the closet here. That's for sure, even though they want to.
Do you want to reiterate that one more time? That's the people who have birthdays around the
Yeah,
21st.
I mean, with Virgos, Saturn's going to oppose, and then the Geminis and the Sagittarius, Saturn is going to square, and squares are like a box, is what we need to understand. And I've always described squares this way: it's like walking into a room, you know, then it's all brick and there's no windows, and the door locks from behind you, and then the four walls of light start closing in on you, creating the tension, anxiety, frustration, chaos, and confusion is what it does. But because we are astrologers, it's like we know when this is going to come, not only in our lives, but in our client's life. And so we can sort of like let them know when this is going to be knocking on the door, so that they can be a little bit more discriminating, discerning, and cautious and careful. Not that they can cancel it out, but I think that it can put it on another level that might be a little bit easier to acclimate into their life. And so this is how it's going to be affecting the Geminis and the Sagittarius. You know, it's going to be
right.
affecting in a personal way, and more of a even a physical way, where the Virgos are in opposition. So usually it deals with some kind of loss or separation, you know, that can go on in their lives.
And that's the 21st, only if you have a birthday, the 21st through the 28th in those.
Yeah, because this is what Saturn, I mean, Saturn's like a slowpoke, you know, in the race with the rabbit and the turtle. So it only moves, you know, it'll move from 0 up to about 7 degrees. So, you know, June, July, and August, those that are born on the 27th and the 28th, they'll be more affected at that time. But then it goes retrograde, so it falls back down to 0. So then it'll fall down to those that are born like on the 26th, 25th, and then, you know, the 21st, so to speak. Especially
Yeah.
21st,
Eventually hit
November,
every.
December, January, February, right in there,
Right.
before it turns around again.
What was that, Mel?
Oh, I was just saying, so it'll go through the whole sign of Pisces, so it'll hit different.
Yeah. Once it gets into the spring of 2024, then it'll you know, start getting into you know, its destination, so to speak, you know, and moving forward. Just that, but it only moves like you know, 2 to 3 degrees a month. And when we were talking about Pluto last time, we have to remember that Pluto represents like masses of people, because Pluto only moves like 2 degrees every 2 years. So that means we have 15,000 births per day for 2 years. A generation of people is affected all at once. This is
Right.
That's a generational planet.
right.
Mm.
So are we
Yeah.
all set then?
Yeah.
Well, I hope you know, and let's remember that each of us does um, astrological consultations, readings. Our websites are posted. And if you need your chart done, remember we also need the birth time. Everything stops, for about 4 minutes of time, and sort of like instills what we would call your vibration frequency, wavelength, as well as karma, by the way, unto that moment. And then when you take that first breath, then you acknowledge sort of like the biography that you're going to partake at this particular lifetime is what goes on with this.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
I think that's good. We went
All
over.
set?
Yeah. Thank
All right,
you.
we'll see you in a few weeks when we will be talking about Jupiter, the biggest planet in the solar system, but can put a smile on your face from ear to ear, that's for sure, because it's going to be going from the sign of Aries into the sign of Taurus. And what's going to be really kind of interesting about this is that not only is Jupiter going to be in the sign of Taurus, which actually deals with like, our bread and butter, as well as like finances in some respects, because it deals with the commodities of life. But Uranus is also in the sign of Taurus. So we're going to have two planets, major planets in the sign of Taurus that will once again be affecting certain signs in a very positive way. But, and in other signs, it'll definitely bring some stress and anxiety, frustration. But once again, I think if you know when it's coming, you can better prepare, so to speak, because the negative aspects are like when it's pouring rain outside. We prepare, we get an umbrella, we're going to get wet, but we're not going to get soaked. That's how simple it is.
Exactly. I love that. And then Jupiter is the planet you really want to, harness because it's abundant. So it's good to know when to take action, when to take advantage.
Yeah, and it's angelic. I mean, if you're a good girl or good boy, it's like, here come your blessings, is how I would look at it, to really excel. I mean, this is the planet that just wants to expand your aspirations no matter where they lie, is how I would look at it. So I guess we can close for now. Thank those of you that are watching. If you have comments, just let us know. We've got our emails and Facebook there. So I guess we'll just bring this to a conclusion. Say thanks, those of you that are watching. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.